Sala cheia, prévia, janela.
Galera, quero começar com vocês rapidinho. Aqui temos 3 eventos da Pax East e Pax West. 2 da Pax West e 2 da Pax East. São 4 total. Não vou poder gravar esses 4. São eventos de concerto. Então, vou descartar esses eventos e vou terminar os outros primeiro. Depois, talvez eu grave esses 2 concertos, esses 4 de concertos que tem. Se eu não trazer aqui, vou mostrar um trechinho de cada um deles. Ok? Então, bora lá para o nosso evento de hoje. Isso para poder mostrar para vocês que tem evento que eu não posso trazer por causa complicado.
Hello.
Pause button.
Hi, everyone.
Video.
Hi, woo! Welcome to Boston Game Dev Lightning Talks. Boston Game Dev is a local nonprofit in the Boston area that supports local game developers from AAA to indie. We're a pretty cool little group. So if you're interested in that, we're doing a bunch of stuff that I'll do at the end of the slide, but let me quickly get into this because we don't have too much time. Each dev up here has their own talk to give. It's 10 minutes, and then once that 10 minutes is up, I'm gonna give them a 4-minute warning, and then they have to stop the talk. So it's pretty quick. We're gonna jump through a lot of hoops, a bunch of cool things to go through today, and yeah, I think with that, that's all I have to say. Thank you guys so much for coming. Really appreciate it. Gonna take a photo at the end, and I would appreciate it if you stayed to help take the photo for Boston Game Dev. So thanks guys so much for coming. We'll start it off with our first talk.
Okay, so that's me. I'm the first talk, and I'll be talking about working with composers and how music doesn't have to be a black box if you're a developer without music experience. So a little bit about me. My name is Noah Beasley. I am a composer for games, working mainly on indie games with really a wide array of different genres. I'm also a professor at Berklee College of Music, on the board of directors of Boston Game Dev, and I co-organize Game Audio Boston. So the kind of main topic I'm going to touch on today is communication. So how do you, as a developer, communicate with someone who has a different discipline from you, specifically composers? And I'm going to start by talking about game art, because I think it's a little bit easier to visualize, if you will. So if you imagine that you're talking to an artist for your game, it's kind of a little bit easier to describe to them exactly what you want, because we are first and foremost visual creatures, and we all are kind of, you know, the artist has a trained eye that they've worked for years to hone, but you're kind of pretty much looking at the same thing and can be in agreement about what you're looking at. So you can say things like, it's too green, or I love the pointy roof thing, more pointy roof things, or more clouds. And it's pretty straightforward, right? The artist knows what you mean, and they can make those revisions. But then let's take a look at music. So really, the big hurdle around music is that it's invisible. Right? So it's not really straightforward like art. You're not really just kind of looking at the same thing and on the same page. It can kind of feel like you're like stabbing in the dark with your ears, right? So it might leave you feeling like this. I don't know who this stock photo man is, but he will appear several times throughout this presentation. We've been on quite a journey. So, you know, you can kind of try to do the art thing and be like, you know, maybe more minor chords, or maybe a different time signature, or, you know, oboe. But it can be really hard when you don't know all the possible inputs into the music and what effect those things might have. So this can be a really major barrier to communication. And that's something that I've found working with a lot of developers through different projects. Sometimes I'll get this feeling that they don't really want to start the music conceptualization conversation with me. And what it often boils down to is that they don't really know how to talk about the music. And they're like, well, I don't really know musical terms, so I don't know how to have this conversation. And that can lead to a couple of pitfalls. And these are kind of the major pitfalls I see when communication isn't going so well. So I might see developers defaulting to referencing their favorite soundtracks for their game. And this is a very natural thing to do, right? It worked for that game, so why wouldn't it work for your game? Or you really, really love this track and you want to try to replicate it for your game. But more times than not, if you haven't done this conceptualization work with a composer, that track isn't quite going to fit the world of the game that you're working on. And then if you go further down this rabbit hole, you might end up kind of falling in love with temporary music that you put over the game that isn't necessarily going to support it very well. And so this is kind of a big challenge for us as composers when we go onto a project and it already has temporary music that the composer has that the developer has fallen in love with. And so, you know, if you listen to any track over and over and over again, you'll get used to it and feel like it's working. And so that can be really hard to kind of replace with something that's supporting the gameplay better. So let's talk for a second about what makes for good game music. First of all, it's good music, right? I think this goes without saying. You want it to be good music that stands on its own. But more importantly, in the context of the game, it reflects what the game is about, right? It reflects its unique setting through different musical choices. So the story and the art and all these different things about the world of the game, different musical choices for harmony and melody and time signature, tempo, production techniques, instrumentation. All these things are going to evoke different aspects of the game. The composer probably doesn't really need your help with the first part, right? Hopefully they already know how to make good music. But they really, really, really need your help to get the second part correct. And the way that you can help them do that is by using adjectives. Here's our friend again. He'll come back more. So you don't need to know musical terminology, and the composer is not going to expect you to know musical terminology. What they really need from you is things like, oh, this game is really goofy and light, or it's rooted in Hungarian mythology, or the gameplay is fast-paced but also tactical, like a dance. So then it's really the composer's job. If you're, say, you know, legendary composer Winifred Phillips, you might say, oh, it's light and goofy. I know that like staccato woodwinds, which means woodwind instruments playing these like kind of short notes, I know that that is going to really evoke that. Okay, it's rooted in Hungarian mythology, so I'm going to use the Dorian sharp 11 scale, because that's really going to evoke that place and time. And it's fast-paced and dance-like. I'm going to use a medium-high tempo for most of the tracks, and I'm going to use odd meters to keep the players on their toes. You didn't need to know any of that, or that any of that evokes any of those things. You just kind of met the composer, a lot like the visual plane with your artist, on this plane of adjectives that you can clearly understand and communicate around. And they really took all of that information, and they turned it into different aspects in the music, and made a combination of things that maybe doesn't exist, hasn't existed before, that's going to kind of perfectly describe what your game is about. And I hear what you're saying, you know, Noah, you know, maybe you have studied music, or you do want to talk to your composer in musical terminology. And that's awesome. Those can be really, really fun collaborations with developers who do have some of that musical experience. By all means, you know, if you have a concept for the music, if you want to talk specifics with your composer, you can definitely do that. But still make sure that you're doing that work to provide them with those adjectives, because they're going to have different musical solutions to those adjectives, and it's going to spark a really interesting conversation with them so you can workshop all that stuff together. So I want to talk a little bit about a game I'm working on right now and what the communication with the developer has been like. This is a dev I've been working with for a while. Really fantastic team. Communication has been really, really good. And so I want to give you kind of, on a practical level, a sense of what this might look like. So Baby CEO is a game where you play this adorable devil baby who runs a publishing company. And through a series of yes-no questions, you're talking to your employees. There's a big, big cast of characters, and kind of deciding the fate of the company. So, you know, it's very baby-like. I'm using xylophone and glockenspiel and C major and a lot of kind of simple harmonies to evoke that. but it's also kind of inspired by Office Space and The Office and all this kind of slice of life, kind of mundane stuff. And so there's kind of specific harmonies that I went with there that are going to evoke that as well. And the main thing to know is that there's this big cast of characters in the game. So there's all these like types of people, and you've worked in an office with this type of person and this type of person. And so having all of that information really helped me not just come up with the instrumentation choices for all those characters so that their personalities can really come out, but with the interactive system that I'm using as well. So I went with what's called a layering system, where the music just kind of keeps going, and when different characters come in and out and talk to you, different layers are going to come in to describe them, so there isn't a break in the flow in the music, and you get a sense of the character. So this is Charlie. He's a biblically accurate angel, so he gets things like organ and choir and this kind of Baroque accompaniment. And for every character, there's a wiki page, which was very, very helpful to me. I really recommend making something like this to share with not just your artists and writers, but with your composers as well. Every one of these characters has, how do they react in this situation? What's their favorite book? Like, what are they like? What do they do with their time? And so I managed to extract a lot of adjectives from that. So just a few more characters as an example. A couple of them were more straightforward, like Ivan here, who is a robot. He gets kind of synths and electronic drums. Roxanne is ex-military, so she gets like brass and snare. But Lynn, who's a ghost, if I didn't really know anything about her, if I didn't have these adjectives, I would have been like, okay, it's a ghost, I'm gonna use theremin, which is like that woo-woo kind of ghost instrument, from like old sci-fi movies. But because I have Lynn's wiki page and I can read a little bit of her dialogue, I know that she is very condescending, right? She always wants to kind of pinch your baby cheeks, and it's kind of infuriating to talk to her. And so I also added these kind of what's called pizzicato strings that are kind of plucky. They remind you of like an ad from the 50s. So to me, that's very like chipper while also kind of being aggressive. And there's theremin too, so she is a ghost. So we get all these different combinations for the different characters. I want to leave you with this. So this is an example of when I had communication from the developer, I had those adjectives, but what I was doing wasn't quite working. You still don't really need to talk to the composer in musical terms when this happened, right? So this is a mini game called Bug Bash. It's kind of like a little whack-a-mole thing. And it was like, oh, a wacky Wario game meets Tron, right? So I had a good idea of what to do, these kind of 80s synths and big drums and kind of wacky Wario-esque synths coming together. And I sent it to the dev, and he said, I like this approach overall, but it's feeling kind of too Halloween-y right now. I knew immediately, oh, that's my chromatic mediant minor harmonies are doing that. And so I went in, I changed the harmonies, I kept everything else, and it was great, and he was like, that's perfect. You do not need to know what minor chromatic mediant harmonies are, right? All you need to know is, this felt like Halloween. I don't want it to feel like, Hocus Pocus or Beetlejuice, and so I'm going to communicate that to my composer. They're going to know exactly what in the music is causing that and make that fix to that specific aspect of it. So that's pretty much it for my talk. If nothing else, I really hope that this encourages you to hire a composer and not to let that communication barrier or not having like a formal education in music stop you from doing that. Because you can communicate with them using this adjective method in the same way that you might communicate with an artist. Here's where you can find me. I'm at Noah Beasley on Instagram and Blue Sky. Please follow Boston Game Dev. We're doing a lot of really cool stuff, whether you live in Boston or you just come to town for PAX and other events. If you just Google us, we have a Discord server and a Blue Sky. And Game Audio Boston is also a really great resource. Whether you're an audio person or you just want to learn a little bit more about audio, we have monthly guests that we bring in on our Discord. You can find that also if you just look up Game Audio Boston. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Noah, with 2 minutes to spare. Woo. Woo. Next is going to be Ryan going over Never's End, but there is the opportunity to potentially answer a couple of questions at the end of this round of talk. So if you guys are interested in that and we don't go over the 10-minute mark, we'll be able to answer 2 questions, so think about that. And I'll hand it off to you, Ryan.
We'll see how fast I can go. So yeah, we're going to talk about game design and some of the weird stuff we're doing in our game, which will maybe be interesting or inspirational, depending on where you are in the industry or outside of it. So if you've never heard of Never's End, it's a turn-based tactical RPG. It's actually on the show floor at the Boston Indie Games booth right now if you want to try it, and you can play with some of the stuff there. You can also find it on Steam and obviously wishlist it, which we love when you do that. So it's a very dynamic tactics game with like player modifiable terrain, modifiable weather. We simulate wind, water, heat, humidity, time of day is dynamic. And we're going to start to get into what we were trying to do with some of that in the game. And so the idea was to build a magic system where we have all this emergent complexity because we're taking advantage of these real-world principles that you kind of know about, like, oh, how weather works and how, like, there's all these interactions that come out of heat and humidity. And if we let you poke at that with magic, like, what does that do with the way you can, like, find tactical solutions to your problems?
Bom,
And so we're going to talk about
também temos
how
essa
some of that
semana
works and like how we've taken these
evento
and broken them down to something that you can
da
understand in the
PlayStation.
game. And so there's only 3 spells in the whole game. There's fire,
Tivemos da
water, and
PlayStation,
stone.
tivemos
And
17
with
da
those, it's
PlayStation.
like
E também
extremely expressive
teremos
what you can do with them is the idea. So we don't tell you how to like
evento
cast fireball like this and do
Kingdom
firewall.
Hearts.
We let you manifest fire from the properties of nature, sort of. And so let's start with fire magic.
Vai ser feito pelo
And
cara
so
da Game
some of
Awards.
the things we're trying to like be inspired by are like, okay, materials define what gets, what's ignitable. Fire spreads to nearby fuel. Combustion then creates more heat from the fire. Other things that come in with heat, which is what
todos
fire
os
magic is all
eventos
based on, is like wind,
têm
right? So
noção de
when wind is cold, it's high pressure. When it's
concerto, de
hot, it's low
game,
pressure near
coisa
the
assim.
surface. And then wind will go
Vou trazer.
from cold
Vamos falar
spots
de
to
games
hot spots. And here you can see someone actually like changing the
concerto,
temperature, creating a wind
piano,
current, knocking
coisa
someone off
assim,
a
não
cliff.
vou trazer aqui no canal.
And
Vou
so
trazer só
this is all
eventos como
very
esse aqui.
smooth in how the real world works, right? There's all these different temperature levels, and we have to break it down to be a bit more board gamey and figure out how do we make this something you can actually like plan around and do
Mas
stuff.
outras coisas
So
não.
we're going to start with just temperature, which keeps it pretty simple. And we're just like, okay, well, there's going to be like 6 temperature
O do
levels. This
Google
bar
não
can
vou
go
trazer,
empty to
galera. Do
full,
Google são muito.
and you can like move that around on the board. And then
É
if you take this
principalmente as
meter and you
datas
fill
que
it past
fazem as
full,
coisas.
things are going to burst into flame if they're made from something burnable. And every little, every object in the entire game has consistent rules. So if you see wood, wood operates like wood, iron operates like iron. If you empty the meter, and stuff will freeze if you then like reduce temperature again. And then we go like, okay, so now let's talk about wind, and stuff starts getting like more
Vamos dar uma
interesting. We're like, how do we
reta final da Paxeast,
let
faltam
people
uns
control
capítulos.
wind in this very systems-driven way? And we said, anywhere you are on this tactical grid, so if you imagine this is like a tactics grid, and these are the little like numbers in that meter, if there's more than one difference, so if there's like 2 or more on like the opposite sides of a block, so if you look at that top row, on one side's 5, one side's 3, there's a difference of 2, so it creates wind from the colder spot to the hot spot. Where on the bottom row, it's just like 2, 3, 3. It's not enough difference to create wind. And then you have wind in the middle row. On the left, you have this big difference going from cold to hot. And so as you start to learn this system, you can start to like really control, like I'm going to move heat from here to here. That's going to create wind. It's also going to freeze this person. And it's sort of like this complexity layers on. And we're going to layer on some more when we talk about what you can do with water. And so here we were like, okay, part of water is like humidity. And so the way humidity works is, the temperature defines how much water the air can hold. So if the humidity level matches temperature, it's foggy, right? If it's more humidity than temperature and the water can't hold all that water, it starts raining. But if it's really cold at the same time, it's going to be snowing. And so all the weather in the game is controlled by this like basic simulation that you have access to. And then water also obviously behaves. So we have like a simulated current on the grid where water will flow downhill, currents will push things. If you have water and it gets cold enough, it'll freeze to ice and so forth. And so we were like, all right, then we'll layer on this humidity meter. And we say like, hey, if the humidity meter matches the temperature, it's going to be foggy. That's going to affect your accuracy, right? If you increase it past the temperature meter, then it's going to start precipitating. And basically the temperature controls how much water can be in the air. So the humidity meter is like changing with that. And so then we just got these 2 spells that all of a sudden like both have ways of interacting with the weather from like different perspectives. And then as you overflow that meter, we were like, that has to do something cool like the fire does. So that'll like manifest water out of nothing. If you reduce it past the bottom, you'll dehydrate people. And then, we have the full like simulation of the water, plus water creates humidity in the air where it is. So you can see like fog in that bottom image. And that's not because we like placed fog there. It's just like, oh, there's water there. That water's making humidity. The temperature in this place you're at happens to be where that humidity level is creating fog. And it's all just like from the systems. And then we said with stone and earth magic, we wanted to like play with the terrain. And we said, well, the rock cycle is sort of a thing we can play with there. It's not something I've seen done in a game before. And so rock, if you weather it over time, it turns into like sediment, right? And if you take sediment and you compress it, it turns back into rock, like sedimentary rock. And if you take rock and compress it more, it metamorphoses into a different type of rock. And if you push that harder, deep under the earth, that turns into magma, right? So we were like, that's cool. How can we bring that into the game? And so we said you can look at a piece of terrain, you can say, all right, if it's sediment, it's height 3. If it's like sedimentary rock, it's height 2. So you can compress the sediment down with magic, and then you can compress that type of rock further, and it goes into a metamorphic rock. So now it's like you're adjusting the terrain between these like 3 height levels. So you can't dig like an infinite hole, because once it's metamorphic and you push magic on it again, you get lava. That creates heat, feeds back into those other systems. And if you're all the way up at the sediment level, like some sand, and you reduce the pressure, it bursts up a dust cloud that's going to blind stuff. You can also create dust clouds with the wind if they're over sediment. So there's like a lot of interplay there. And so another fun thing about the game is because of this, we actually have like proper rock types and cycles of all those rock types in the game. Where like here on the right, you can see sand that goes into sandstone, it goes into quartzite, and into lava. And like we have that affects also like walking over sand is slower, walking over quartzite or stone is faster. And so as you learn these magic spells, you'll start seeing stuff in the map a lot different, where sand was once just like an obstacle. Now it's like an opportunity to like build a hole in the ground there. And so we have all this stuff, and you go like, what does that do? Well, just with the magic part alone and these little systems, you start getting like all these interconnections. And this is really just a subset. Because like you can see in the top right, I have like, oh, there's fire and fuel, and that's spreading. And the bottom, there's like water, and it's affected by the elevation, it's affected by the stone. But water and fire interact too, and there's all these other like arrows that I just couldn't fit in here of all these things that happen. And so that's like the nature part. You can imagine that affecting status effects. But then what we did is we said, we've got all this. Now we're going to design all the combat to be very dependent on all those properties. So we can say like, okay, if you're at higher elevation, you're more likely at headshot, right? Fog's going to reduce accuracy. If there's a high enough ledge and you push someone off it, they're going to take a knockdown. If there's a high enough ledge behind someone, they'll slam into it, they'll get like stunned or whatever. And if you reduce the temperature enough and someone gets cold, it takes them more time to do something. If it's hot, it takes them more stamina. So once we get all of the like combat side mapping to this, like the magic system in the game is very different and very complex and has an extremely high skill ceiling in a way that I haven't seen before. And so that's kind of like what we're trying to push forward with in a tactics game, is a very rules-based magic, and it's not just like, here's arbitrary spells you can cast or whatever. And so that is the weird thing we're up to, and please check it out online if that sounds interesting to you.
Does anyone have any questions before we go on to the next one? Sorry, I don't know if you guys heard me. If anyone has any questions before going on to the next one, on either side there are 2 microphones in the middle of the room. We'll only be taking 1 or 2 questions. So whoever gets there first.
As the systems or the rules started to interact with each other more, did you find that players needed more tutorial telling them the inner workings of it, or did you find that just through playing they were able to discover it?
Yeah, we try to give you a lot of like tutorials that are sort of optional as you learn them to train up on that. And really like learning how to teach people that is a big trick, because we have a game where you can be a bad wizard, right? Like you can set yourself on fire, knock yourself off the cliff, end up freezing your friend by accident, which is really fun because normally you think of wizards as clever, but games don't really ask you to be clever to learn how to use magic. So that is still something we're figuring out. And yeah, if you download the demo, you can try it out and see if we're doing a good job at that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I was wondering if there was anything in particular that you discovered when trying to convey these like environmental effects through graphics and sound. Like if there was any sort of like cheat or like secret code that finally clicked for you and like made it easy to convey.
I mean, like anywhere you can create, you have some feedback channel, whether that's like, audio, visual, like haptics, anything that can layer on and communicate some state change is super important. And that's something we're always working towards of like, oh, here's some interaction. What's another way we can like call that out? Because there is like, so much detail to pick up. And the idea is like, oh, early on, you're going to get a little bit of it, but then when you're really far into the game, you can go back to that earlier battle and be like, I would not have done any of that, right? Like I know how to really optimize this. But yeah, like audio and effects using the combat log in the game is another sort of cheat, but yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Does anyone else have any more questions before we go on to our next talk? Perfect, beautiful. I'm gonna pass it off to Becca Fenn to go over the next talk.
Hi, everybody. I'm Becca. Oh, yes, let's clap. So I'm Becca. I'm a lead community manager here at Warner Brother Games Boston. I'm also a bee enthusiast. I love bees. I want to clarify that I specialize in live ops heavy, long-lived game communities with player-centric feedback loops, which is a mouthful. But I think it's important to make that distinction because there's kind of two different ways of releasing games. There's one and done, you put it out there, and then you're just supporting the existing community. And then there's these games that live for a long time. We really want our players to be happy, and that's going to involve a lot more back and forth. And that's the stuff that I love. So the strategies that we're going to be talking about today are going to be relevant to that. And in particular, especially with these types of games, we release a lot. We can be pushing data every day. We could have new clients rolling out bi-weekly or monthly. We have really complex schedules of events. And all of that gives a lot of opportunities for change to be introduced into the environment for players. So as a little bit of a prologue here, change is scary. It can be very hard for the thing that you love to change in a way. It can also be scary for developers to have this thing that they build suddenly have these changes and no longer be stable. So it's scary for both sides of the table there. And it can really kill hype, which we don't want. We want to enjoy our games. We want to be excited about new releases. It is sort of a spectrum, though. So on one end is fear, and the other end is excitement. But how much players are willing to trust and go along with you kind of also impacts that. So if they trust you as a developer and they're excited, then awesome, let's go. We want that release. If it's in either of these quadrants, if they, it's a scary change, but, they trust you, then they're going to be willing to stick around with it. Or if maybe you haven't really had that many clean releases, but it's a cool change, like they're going to stick with you. The real problem comes when it's a scary, big change that could impact their game, and they just don't trust you to do it. So there are some strategies that you can do as a community manager. Our job is to straddle the line between our players and our developers and keep communication open. So here's one of the strategies that you can do. I call this community exposure therapy, AKA how to release big changes without alienating your player base. Step one, come into my office. What brings you in today? We've got to figure out what our assumptions are, who our audience is. When I say who your audience is, I'm thinking, is it cozy gamers who are looking for an escape from reality? Or is it very competitive PvEers who really care about spreadsheets above all else? These are things that you should know about your audience, and hopefully as like a developer or a community manager, you've got this already figured out. But it kind of impacts everything else, how they're going to take a change. If it's low stakes to them, whatever. But if it's something they really care about, that's going to be important. That also leads into the next one, which is how impactful is your change? Keep in mind these are your assumptions. It might just be a simple UI change, but actually that is pretty impactful because you're a player who's used to always being able to click the corner of the screen and find their health bar, and suddenly you've moved the UI around, and that's very disruptive. But you can kind of measure, is it something small? Is it something big? Am I changing the entire combat meta for the game? Okay, that's big and scary. And then finally, what does everyone stand to lose or gain? And I say everyone because usually there's both sides. The devs have things to gain, and players also have things to gain. For example, like maybe it's an efficiency thing, like as a developer, you want to make this change, maybe you want to standardize something because it'll save you time every month. But then as a result, maybe players lose the sort of excitement of seeing like what the things are if they change from event to event. Or maybe they gain consistency by having those things be standardized. So there's sort of both sides of the spectrum. These are your assumptions. It's good to get these out of the way early and figure out what it is that you need to communicate as a result. Next step, a lot of these things that we just went over are going to lead to feelings, and a lot of like the reaction to players are going to be triggered by, you know, sort of emotional things. So it's time to gather intel, see how players react to what we're talking about. There's a lot of way to validate your assumption, especially early. So this is like before you've announced your release. You can survey about things. You know, maybe if it's a UI change, you can sort of send out a general survey to be like, how do you feel about these different systems? You know, sort of suss out information that way. You can also have focus groups. It's great if you have a trusted group of players or maybe people who are under NDA that you can give things to early. Of course, nothing is ever safe, so you still have to be careful if you give out information early. But that's a great thing, especially if you have a long-lived game where you have a group of players that are you know, just constantly giving you feedback and they want to be a part of that conversation. You also can kind of piecemeal out certain pieces. So maybe you have a really big change coming, but you could cut out a piece like here's a little shift that we can do ahead of time and see how players react to that before you get to the big release at the end. That's a great way too, because if you see you release something and players react way differently than you expect, you can have the time to adjust before you get to your big exciting release. So yeah, use this to reassess your dev approach and craft messaging that is specifically targeted to what players care about. You want to speak to those biggest concerns before they have time to, you know, fester negativity within your community. And then finally, step 3, this is facing your fears. This is the exposure. The scarier change is probably the earlier and the more exposure that you want to give your community to it. So you don't want to just announce it and then have it come out and have everyone panic. You also don't want to announce it vaguely and have people assume the worst. So things can also change a lot throughout development. So this is sort of the tricky point where you have to use your discernment. You don't want to announce something too early and then have a situation like this. This is Elder Scrolls 6. Notoriously, Todd Howard just did an interview where he talked about this. He said sometimes you need to inform people. I might argue that informing them 8 years ago probably wasn't the right time to do it, because at this point, the game probably looks nothing like this. But there are some Todd alternatives that you can do to sort of introduce ideas early without, you know, kind of removing your freedom to develop as you need and have things change throughout development. One of these is like you can reveal a roadmap without revealing the actual feature. You can say our release is coming at this time to show that there are things on the roadmap. And this can be useful to just sort of mentally let a community prepare. There are some types of communities where like people will take time off work when the update comes out. So like that's nice to let them know ahead of time. You can also demonstrate if you're doing like what I said before, where there's going to be prerequisite, you know, releases ahead of time. If there's quality of life, if it's, you know, say you're giving some end game content and you're going to do it at the end of the year and you're going to spend the first half of the year maybe inflating rewards so that it's easier to get to that old endpoint because you're extending it. That's nice for players to see. It gives them time to live in that world and maybe release some anxiety around like, oh, it's going to be really hard. I'm not going to have enough resources. They can kind of see the full picture of it. Another one, dev diaries. This is pretty broad. The strategy here, though, that I think is great is start with the problem that you're actually solving. Don't announce what the big feature is, but say like, hey, here's something that we think is a problem, or here's some design goals that we want to design around, and really let the players get in on that. It's great because it also gives them a lexicon that's shared with you. They can tell you exactly when you aren't meeting your goals. And you can keep doing that over time. Again, like exposing them to the ideas more and more as opposed to all at once. So in summary, exposure therapy, it's all about being proactive, strategic, and consistent. You know, it's not one and done. You give them a lot of opportunities to engage with it. You want to have as much data as possible. You want to use your discernment about when you actually release information and how you do it. And make sure you keep that running dialogue with your players so that they are as much part of the process as your developers are. Now that wasn't so scary, was it? All right, thank you so much. Also, I have some goodies. If you guys, I'll probably stand outside. We'll have to get out of this room when we're done. But feel free to come say hi. And I have some badge ribbons and things that I can give out if you like that sort of thing.
Thank you, Becca. We're not taking a Q&A for this talk, but if you want to talk to Becca outside, she will be there to give you fun things. And with that, we're going to pass it over to our friend Zyba for his next talk. Thank you, Becca.
Hey, everybody. Oh, hey. Nice to see you all. I've decided the vibe is more of a chill thing.
Sit down?
I was going to stand up and yell at you all, but it's good. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me. Blender is my favorite video editor. There are 3 appropriate responses to that. First one is cool. Tell me more. What is wrong with you? And I really don't care. I hope your talk is short. Let's start with what's wrong with me. Hi, I am Zyba. I run a little indie game studio here in Boston, and I have been demoing my games on this very show floor for at least 15 years. And in this time, it has drained all the color from my hair and endowed me with great wisdom. The first bit of wisdom that I'm going to share with you is you will not get rich just showing your games on the PAX show floor. You need to have some sexy videos for your games. These are a few of the trailers that I have made for my games over the years, and I edited these videos with Blender. Blender is a 3D modeling and animation tool. I edited my videos with a modeling and animation tool. It is such a great modeling and animation tool that this is the Wikipedia page about all the great things it does for modeling and animation, like modeling Oscar-winning films and animating big-budget TV show effects. And in all of this effusive text about how great it is for modeling and animating, here is the entirety of what this article has to say about using it as a video editor. It also includes a video editor. There is nothing to suggest anyone has ever used it or that you should consider that. So why have I decided to integrate Blender's third nipple into my professional workflow? And it's not just cost. This is my job. I will pay for the right tool. I have paid for Adobe Whatnot and Premiere and Final Cut, and I could use DaVinci or Windows Movie Maker. But some of those might actually objectively be better video editors. But here's my next piece of wisdom. The best tool is not necessarily the best tool for you. Allow me to torture a metaphor. This is a $3,000 wine bottle opener. It is 24-karat gold, solid ebony backing, and a sensuous lever pull action. This is not just a wine bottle opener. It is a lifestyle. Did you notice it's wall-mounted? You have to commit. You have to find a little place in your house and put a shrine to it. And people will come to your house, and they will look at this, and they will think that they have learned something about you and your relationship to wine and money. This is a $30 pocket knife. This is its reproductive organ. No, it's a wine bottle opener. It's not luxurious or sensual, but it does open bottles of wine for 1% of the cost of the previous device. It may take a little bit more effort, but it gets the job done, and it doesn't try to take over your life. And when you are done with it, you can put it in a drawer and forget about it until the next time you need it to open a bottle of wine, or maybe even to do something else, like Blender. Cool. Tell me more. So Blender is actually a really capable video editor. Here is me editing a video with it. This is the educational portion where I tell you that You put all the stuff you want to be in the video on the bottom part, and then move it around, and the video shows up on the top part. Then you hit save, and you've edited a video. And I'm not going to tell you more than that, because if you remember, this talk was just about, it's my favorite, not how to use it. So go look it up. But I love it. And for this and other reasons, it's really easy to obtain and install. It runs on any operating system. You can even download it from Steam, and that'll keep it updated. It's free on Steam. It is open source. And this all adds up to something that is there for me when I need it, and it's not in my way when I don't need it. Okay, some of you still don't care, and I can appreciate that, because some of you are normal people who don't need to edit videos. But what you need to know is that this is not just important. This is really important. Society needs idiots who do things the wrong way. We depend on them. As society grows, we hit these local maximums where things are okay. They will never get better than okay unless some fool does something so dumb it drags us down under the curve so that we can go back up to higher heights. To illustrate this point, I'm now going to share with you a few great dumb moments. The year is 1905. It's San Francisco. An 11-year-old boy named Frankie Epperson is playing on his back porch, mixing candy and water in a cup with a stick. This is the good life. This is what children should be doing. Frankie then forgets this cup on his back porch overnight. It's dumb, but it's like kid-level appropriate dumb. It's a good dumb kid move. He leaves the cup there overnight with a stick in it. The temperature drops. He comes back the next morning, and it's frozen, and he's got a stick sticking out of his sugary water. Frankie has just invented the popsicle. This is a true story. Fast forward today, 2 billion are sold every year. Baltimore, 1878. Konstantin Fahlberg is working for Johns Hopkins University researching coal tar extract. This is humanity at its best. We are pushing the limits of what we understand. It's dinner time, and Konstantin doesn't wash his hands. His dinner tastes oddly sweet. It's actually the sweetest thing he has ever tasted. To quote Konstantin, "I dropped my dinner and ran back to the laboratory. There in my excitement, I tasted the contents of every beaker and evaporating dish on the table." But Konstantin has just discovered the first synthetic sweetener. He has discovered saccharin. True story. Boston, 2026. I get to make video games for a living, and you get to play them. I think that's a pretty good deal. For some unknown reason, I start editing my videos with a 3D modeling and animation suite. It's not an obvious choice, but it works out really well. And I don't know where this story ends. But I can feel the uplift that we are all experiencing at this moment. The great unknown of the future has never looked better, and we need people to march off in unexpected directions. We need mistakes that help us discover great fortune. And what I have done for you, what I continue to do, I have done for the benefit of everyone who dreams of a future where we all rise to a new utopia. You are welcome. God bless you. God bless America.
Thank you, Zyba, for a wonderful talk. Oh my gosh, guys, we have 17 minutes left.
We were too fast.
We went too fast.
We were too lightning.
But now we're gonna accept some questions for that talk. So if anyone is interested or has any comments to add, you can go to the middle, and if not, that is also okay. beautiful.
Okay, so how long have you been editing videos using Blender? You said 2016?
A long time.
Cool.
Not a question, but you've convinced me. I'm going to start editing using Blender myself.
I know you said you weren't going to say how to make videos in Blender, but like, what would you say the learning curve is compared to other stuff, like to jump in and make videos in Blender?
Well, it's like really obvious in Blender because like the hotkey for cutting a video
Iniciar
is K
janela.
for cut.
Pesquisar janela.
So it's like just
Caixa
chock
de
full of
pesquisa,
things like that.
edição em
And once you
branco.
get that down, you're good.
Facebook.
Awesome.
Facebook janela.
Hi.
Facebook.
I was curious to know how do you
Carregamento.
find audio engineers for your work or for video game development? And also if they
Explorador
do
de
programming
arquivos
as well,
fixado.
or if they just
Desktop.
strictly
Nova
audio.
área de trabalho 1. Exibição
Me in
de
particular?
visão
Anybody.
I'm
projetor
happy to take this
interno.
one. And if
Projetor
anyone has questions about my talk, I'm also happy to answer them. I just, because I was the first, I wanted to make sure we had enough time, and now we have 15 minutes, so, you know. There's a lot of great resources online. I mean, honestly, a lot of audio work ends up being word of mouth. But you can also go on places like Soundlister, or you can even go on something like Blue Sky or Instagram. You know, a lot of, if you're looking for, are you looking for a specific kind of discipline of audio?
No, like me personally, I'm an audio engineer, but I'm just curious, like where to enter if I wanted to help out a developer or something.
Yeah, I mean, Soundlister is a great place. I wouldn't go for something like Fiverr or any of those websites. They can tend to be like really kind of race to the bottom. I don't really recommend it. But yeah, communities like that, I mean, communities like Game Audio Boston, or if you're not Boston-based, there's probably an audio community where you live, so you can work with local people. I would just seek out those kinds of communities and reach out to people there.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, this question's for Noah. You were talking about using adjectives as a game dev to communicate with composers on more narrative and emotional aspects of the game. But let's say there's like a technical issue or like some kind of implementation that you're trying to communicate, let's say in like Wise or Unity, and that's not being understood by like the game devs. And so that becomes not a question of like adjectives, but like that would be my question to you, is like how do you navigate a technical discrepancy rather than like a creative direction one?
Yeah, I mean, so I touched on it a little bit when I talked about like the layering system in a baby CEO, right? And so those adjectives and knowing kind of mechanically what's happening in the game is really, really helpful for those implementation questions as well. So I would say, you know, if you, are you a developer or an audio person?
I'm a composer. I'm looking
Okay.
to write music for video games.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, you know, developers will have different levels of experience with something like Wise or Fmod or middleware like that. But really, the purpose of, and if you haven't heard of middleware for audio, really the purpose of it is for you to have those tools like fades and tempo and all of those audio-specific tools. You kind of obfuscate all of that, and so the developer doesn't have to worry about it. And when everything's working properly, you know, ideally, all they're doing is telling Wise or Fmod what's going on in the game, and you have taken care of that, that audio part of it. So they don't need to really know any of that specialty stuff. So I would just kind of present it to them in that way, like, hey, let me know what percentage health the player has, or when they've entered this location. And you know, if you're using middleware correctly, it's just going to work because you've set that up on your end.
I have a really quick follow-up. You mentioned about quality of communication with game devs as it relates to like their knowledge of music, right? Like, if, in your experience, how have you dealt with a dev that's kind of being heavy-handed with like, I want like these specific notes on this instrument, like at this time?
Yeah. That can be tough. I mean, sometimes, like I said, it's really great to collaborate with a dev who knows about music, but if they're kind of trying to micromanage you, it's just, you kind of got to take it case by case. It can be difficult, and you know, maybe just kind of remind them that they hired you for a reason. You have kind of your own compositional voice and how you're going to solve these issues.
Amazing, thank you.
Yeah.
This is another question for Noah, specifically from the perspective of someone who's just kind of getting into music and trying to do, you know, more music for game jams, etc. And when talking about the process of kind of figuring out those adjectives and then trying to base the music off it, as someone just getting into that, what's kind of like the research process of, you know, music theory-wise, how could I represent that this game is like set in a swamp and it's supposed to be kind of dingy, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I mean, that's just more of like a media literacy thing, right? So I would just like play a ton of games, right? Which you're probably already doing. Just take note of what the game is about and what the music is doing, and you'll figure out that all these combinations are already happening, but you're just not noticing it. So just, you know, watch movies also. Movies also do this, and so do shows. So just consume as much media as possible.
Thank you.
Hi, friends. I'm the fourth composer in the row. I actually have used Reaper for video editing because it's my tool of choice. But I guess I have a question. Not that you have a Diet Coke in mind, but is there a call to action regarding Blender as video editing software? Is there something that you're hoping to steer this ship towards a Diet Coke-like destination?
I can't benefit from this financially in any way. I don't really care what you do about that. I would encourage you to do stupid things, I think might be the thrust of the talk.
So just do a thing for a different thing? Is that what you're hoping for other people to do, I guess?
Is this recorded? Just don't pay Adobe a bunch of money. I don't
Yeah!
Sorry. I'm sure those products are made by good people, but they're just products.
All right. So I had no idea it was on Steam. That's cool.
I have another systems question. Given that when you're making really complex games and a change to one system could have changes to like 2, which could have changes to more, how do you go about balancing the game when a change could be almost exponential?
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
Oh, yeah. So when you're making a really complex game with lots of systems and where one system interacts with like 2 more, which interact with more on their own.
Yeah.
How do you go about balancing that game when a small change could have exponential effects?
Yeah, so we've been working on it for 7.5 years, so that's kind of how we deal with it. But yeah, like you have to have a really good understanding of all the systems, right? And you need the willingness of like everyone to like really dig in and find that stuff too, because like often there's problems if you'll change something and somebody's strategy maybe shifts in a way that's worse, and that can have a negative feeling. But you got to like step back and say, all right, what would happen if we were looking at this fresh and see really what new possibilities come out of it? But it is real. Yeah, I don't have a great answer than to say it is really hard when you change something because you want to fix one little edge case, but everything is so tightly interconnected, and it's sort of being willing to attack that challenge, I think, is what's going to make the game kind of something special, because we're not trying to like in games, you'll often decouple stuff, and you'll say like, oh, we have like 5 currencies, not because we want to confuse the player, but because we can balance them all separately. And where we're trying to make everything like feed back into each other, it is just, yeah, it's hard, and it just takes a lot of time and willingness to look at it, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I see you said about using Blender as a video editor, but I noticed you didn't make your presentation in Blender. I'm just saying.
Who makes the video for their? We had talked about it doing it live, and then we had to like switch the stuff, and I was like, I'm gonna mess it up.
It was easier in Google Slides.
Yeah, it was easier. Yeah, that's a lot of effort, but I think you should do it. I think it'd be great.
I think
that wasn't it. No, I mean I think it'd be fun. I didn't mean that in a snarky way. I think it'd be a fun project.
But also, at least Blender is somewhat like 1% of its documentation is about video editors compared to something like, what about Google Earth?
Google Earth to
Yes.
edit my videos?
You can make videos in Google Earth, sort of.
Yeah. I mean, that stunned
Google Earth
reaction
on
is
a
just a
platform,
thing
or-
that's going to indicates it will pull us down below a curve. If you go ahead and pursue that, it may be what we all need.
Oh, I think it is. Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm back up again. I did not like that, first of all. But second of all, to you, the Blender Man. So, like, you edited a bunch of videos in Blender. So, like, you just, like, import MP4s? Are you able to record footage in the Blender engine itself so you can quickly edit it? Like, are you able to move models around in your trailer? Like, and then on top of all that, like, what was probably the greatest thing you've ever created using Blender that was apparently not a PowerPoint?
Well, the Blender video editor is actually really complicated, and I don't know what all it does. Like, it does a lot of stuff.
You said it's simple, though, earlier.
Well, there's just depths to it that I don't need, and they're not. What's interesting about it, particularly lately, is that one of the former lead developers of the Unity game engine has taken it up as a hobby, and he's actually been committing stuff to it like wild. So he's been doing a whole lot of efficiency stuff and adding in new features. So it's actually growing, and it's got momentum. So it's pretty cool. So you could do some really complex stuff. I just don't need to, but it does have depth.
Maybe that might be a future project.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I had a question for Noah. So I was wondering, as a developer, is it better to work with a music composer like side by side as the game is being made, or do you go out or like reach out to them after like the game is finished or like once the demo is out?
Yeah, that is an excellent question, and almost always I think audio is brought in too late on games, and so really, as soon as you start, the sooner the better, bring in audio people. And I really think that that's my favorite aspect of working on games rather than film or any other kind of linear media. In those types of media, everything has to get made first because you need everything to be locked before you make the music. In games, all you need is a concept or like a really early prototype or just a description about what the game is about, and you can start to conceptualize the music. And there's so much magic that happens when the composer sends you a sketch and you're like, oh, that's really cool, that makes me want to make this new mechanic, and the artist makes art, and like the composer will look at the art while they make the music, and like it's great. So just do it as early as possible.
Great, thank you.
We're only going to take 2 more questions, and then going to go into the end spiel. So you can go.
Hello, this question's for Becca. So I work as a production manager for different games in indie animation. I also do community management and like crowdfunding. So I applied for a job about a year ago, and they told me they didn't want to take me because they needed live op experience. So I was like, oh my gosh, where do I get live op experience? So maybe you can tell me how to get live op experience.
So, I mean, live ops is kind of just a keyword for like a lot of things happening constantly. Can you show that you can work in a kitchen that is constantly bustling?
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's one of those sort of catch-22s of like you need the experience to get the job, but the job is how you get the experience. I think, in terms of like community management, I often look for not necessarily paid work, but like experience. Maybe you run your own community, and you have some examples like that you can do, or like you run a page for something else, or even just like fan work, like on a game that is constantly updating. If you can show that like, hey, I'm doing updates here that are covering everything that's happening in game, and I'm getting that information not while it's being developed, but secondhand. I mean, I think that shows a level of coordination there. Okay. In terms of product management, I mean, I think you can do that with a lot of projects that are fast moving. You just have to be able to twist the wording to show that key, which is like, there's a constant schedule of releases, and I'm able to react quickly to a rapidly changing environment,
right,
and kind of key that way to make your experience that you do have relevant to the gaming side. Otherwise, it's a little bit tricky because, like, really, where else would you be able to do that? I guess you could make your own game, but like that seems a little wild to do.
Yeah, right. All right, well, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. My question is also for Becca, and I was the example you had of Elder Scrolls I thought was really great, and it actually reminded me of like so what would you say is the biggest like issue or like mistake you had while you were having a game developed, and like how did you address it? Like, did you give a timeline? Did you go silent? Did you promise to like roll it back immediately? How did you overcome that hurdle?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say like the biggest hurdles for me have always been like not maybe having those assumptions and not realizing how impactful a change would be, and then realizing after the fact, like, oh, like we've really hurt our players doing this, you know, like we couldn't see how this was, you know, their reaction would be. So it's almost always that, you know, lack of proactiveness or like getting information ahead of time. Thankfully, I work for companies that are really open to player feedback and like willing to iterate after things are released. So it's usually just a process of saying like, hey, we hear you, and you know, we're gonna take your feedback in, here's how you can give us feedback, and then, you know, see if we can work on it and get it to a point where players are happy with it. So at the end of the day, if, you know, people aren't happy, then, you know, it's not really a successful feature release or, you know, whatever we're doing. So usually it's just that process of, oops, we made a mistake, and, you know, here's how we're gonna fix it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
With 1 minute left, thank you guys so much for coming. I'm just going to give the little spiel for coming to the talk and supporting Boston Game Dev. My name is Savannah. I was your moderator today. We do have a booth on the PAX floor, and if you want to play one of our great games, then you can go see it. And then you can follow us on Boston Game Dev on Blue Sky and Boston Indies, which is a little other subsect. We're on Instagram, so if you're interested in local game development and stuff, you can see that. It is Boston Game Dev Week, so we have a bunch of events happening for local developers. So if you're a developer and you want to jump in on that, if you just scan that QR code, you'll just see all of our events. And with that, thank you so much for coming. Please stay so we can take a big selfie, and we'll let you go. Thank you guys so much.
Moleque passou foto, hein? Galera, vamos ficando por aqui. Então, muito obrigado por acompanharem.
Play button 2 of 3. Video progress bar 59 minutes.
Foi o primeiro evento Boston Week Film Show, né? Vou chamar assim, né? Na Paxeast, né? Mas foi legal isso aqui. Gostei de que eu vi focando nos jogos indies deles, né? Muito obrigado a todos por me acompanharem e nos vemos daqui a pouco na próxima live. Tchau, tchau, galera. Beijos.
Iniciar janela. Pesquisar janela. Número, OBS, exibição de OBS, interromper.